The way that Americans see Mexico is really shaped by clickbait media coverage, political lies, and stories that are told by people that never actually experienced them. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you why Americans are so terrified of Mexico and what Mexico is really like. So there's three factors that are really contributing towards this negative perception of Mexico. And I'm going to go through them right now. Number one is that the US media really focuses on violence. They concentrate on drugs, violence, and crime. They really focus in on this. And they specifically focus in on the border status, especially where most of the crime happens along the border of the US. They focus in on these areas. It's basically them using a magnifying glass to tell their story. They're not telling the whole picture. They zoom in and show nothing but the bad stuff. And yeah, there is bad things that happen in Mexico. I'm not going to deny this, and I never do. But Mexico is a big country, and there's way more good than bad here in Mexico. Like if you measured it out, the good would outweigh it by a ton, by astronomical numbers. So this unbalanced view of Mexico can really paint an unfair picture of the whole country. And what happens is this report on all this violence overshadows what's good in Mexico, which is completely unfair to Mexico and the Mexican people. So the second factor is political speech, specifically in the US. The way that politicians in the US speak about Mexicans and Mexico itself is a huge factor to this problem. And usually these politicians speak about it only around election time because it's a big way to get votes. It's an unethical way, but it's a huge vote grab. And these guys that are running for politics usually will say anything to get your vote, even if it's not true. What the messed up part is that the things that they say could be huge for their campaign, and not just for votes, but for donations from people and companies too. Like it costs a lot of money to run for political office, and they get donations from places so they can, bend the rules or say the things that these people that donate want to hear. And a lot of companies have interest in talking negative about places like Mexico. And what they'll do is these same companies will donate to these politicians for their campaign so they can run their campaign and go around and do rallies and stuff like this and ads on TV. Two large companies that have interest in talking bad about Mexico and Mexicans is Core Civic and Geo Group. They've donated millions of dollars towards Donald Trump's campaign in the past. And what these companies are huge corporations that run prisons in America. And in these prisons, guess what the largest population of people that are stuck in these prisons? If you said Mexicans, you win a gold star. But this makes you think, doesn't it? Like it's really messed up. No wonder these politicians say things that make Mexicans look like criminals. It's always for the dollars. It's especially messed up when you look at statistics that US citizens are more likely to commit a crime than any immigrant. So how does that make any sense? Well, it makes sense because they've been giving Mexicans a bad name for 150 years now. More than 150 years. So this political talk is perfect. It controls this mistrust that the American people have of Mexicans and other foreigners that come to their country. Factor number 3 is lack of experience. For many people from the US, their only experience of Mexico is through TV, movies, news, and political speech. And these places aren't the best place to get your information about Mexico. Without actually traveling here and experiencing experiencing a lot of Mexico, you can't have this balanced outlook of what Mexico is truly like. And these people that have never come here can't call themselves professionals on Mexico. They can't call themselves professionals on how the majority of Mexicans live here. They can't call themselves professionals on tourist and non-tourist places, like how safe they are. But trust me, a lot of them think they're professionals. They think they're qualified. Just go check out my other videos, or even in these comments, eventually you'll see people saying weird stuff like things that they never been to Mexico. They'll say things, crazy things, that they think they're professionals, like they think they're professional of Mexico, like they know it all, but they've never been here. And in my opinion, they're not qualified to say anything about it. So now I have 3 things that will explain exactly what the true Mexico is, like exactly what the reality of Mexico is, through my eyes and many other people that have lived here or understand it. Number 1 is that popular tourist destinations are usually safe. Yeah, there's a lot of money put in towards security and stuff like that, yes. Millions of people from the US come to resort areas throughout Mexico all year, millions. Places like Cancun, Tulum, Cabo San Lucas, and Puerto Vallarta. Majority of them come without any problems. But there are states throughout Mexico that are considered dangerous. But a lot of times, if you're not from these areas, like if you're a foreigner coming to these areas and you're not from there or you don't have a good reason to be there, then why are you there? If you don't belong, why would you be there? If there's nothing to offer you, why would you be there? It's just like places in the US. There are cities in the US, places and cities in the US that you just don't go to. You don't have any purpose to go to unless you're visiting a relative or have a really good reason to be there. And in some of these places, they'll ask questions of why you're here. But that doesn't paint the whole country of being dangerous in the USA. But for some reason in Mexico, it paints all of Mexico super dangerous. Do you see the double standard here? Number 2, Mexico has a vibrant culture and foreigner communities. There's a large community of foreigners here that come from the US who have come here to live or retire. And a bunch of them, not all of them, but a bunch of them enjoy a higher quality of life for many different reasons. There's places like San Miguel de Allende, Puerto Vallarta, and Lake Chapala, if I'm saying that right. These places have huge communities of foreigners. They're foreigners, not expats. Don't worry, I won't call them expats. We don't call them expats anymore on this channel. I've learned my lesson. I get it. But inside of these communities, there's whole networks of people that, there's English speaking healthcare if you need it. You want to learn Spanish? Yes, I think you should if you come here. It's a good plan. Be nice to learn something new, right? There's social clubs. There's cultural events. You can learn a lot about Mexico in these places and other places in Mexico. Mexican people are really, really excited to teach you about their culture. And they have a really interesting culture. And there's also things like volunteer organizations if you want to join them. And all this stuff makes moving to these places in Mexico a lot easier. And a lot of these people that move there are benefiting their life. They're upgrading their life to better living standards. A slower pace of life, which is always good, and a strong sense of community. And let's not forget the access to art, music, and Mexican food. And compared to a lot of big cities in the US and other places around the world, these places are a lot more affordable. Now, there's a lot of issues with gentrification and things like that, but I'm not going to go into about in this video because it's a really complicated situation that's going on here in Mexico, and maybe that talk is for another day. So if Mexico was so dangerous everywhere, you think that these places would exist? I don't think so. I don't think people would come here to live a better life. I don't know. Number 3, Mexico is a diverse and welcoming nation. The reality of Mexico goes way beyond these headlines that you see on your news. Mexico is a vast country. It's huge, with an unlimited amount of diverse landscapes. And trust me, you wouldn't believe it until you've seen it. Like, I didn't know how diverse Mexico was. Not just in landscapes, but with people too. I've been to a lot of places around Mexico, especially around Mexico City, like outside of Mexico City and to the beach and stuff like that. And you can go from desert to mountain to beach to chilly mountain town where it's foggy and there's only pine trees. Like, imagine that. Thinking about Mexico, places in Mexico being cold. And did you know that Mexico City is over 7,000 feet above sea level on a mountain plateau? And on average, like the average temperature year round, it kind of changes over time, but the average temperature is 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the average. You wouldn't think that exists in Mexico, would you? Like, the weather here is almost perfect, in my opinion. And it gets chilly at nighttime. And I didn't know this before I came here. But do you know what the best thing about Mexico is? The best thing about Mexico, in my opinion? And I kept this for last. I kept the best thing for last. It's kind of cliche, but we're going to go with it, right? The best thing in Mexico is the people, is the Mexican people. They're some of the kindest, sweetest, friendliest, giving, funniest people that I've ever met in the world. And I've traveled quite a bit. And this isn't some kind of kindness that's forced just so foreigners think that Mexicans are nice or that you feel more welcome when you're here. It's not fake. It's real. This warmth really beams out of them when you actually interact with them. Because Mexicans don't really, they're not in your face. They won't bother you. They won't push you to buy something. They'll ask you once and leave you alone. Or if they see you walking on the streets, they don't take pictures. They don't do anything like that. They keep to themselves. But when you interact with them, they're funny. They're just so kind and so curious to ask where you're from. You'd be super surprised by how fast you can actually make connections here. How you can make personal relationships here with other people. And they're so fun to be around. They make jokes all the time. They laugh all the time. And I can go on and on about this. There's a ton of other things that I didn't include in this video that Mexicans are great at. They're amazing people. And I've been here for over 2 years now, and I can tell you one thing. Well, kind of two things, but let me tell you this. That I know not everything is perfect. Not every kind of people is perfect. We all have our flaws, and that's what makes us beautiful. No one is perfect. But I can tell you this one thing for sure. Not for one moment within the 2 years that I've been here, have I ever had an experience with a Mexican like they show on US media. I've never felt threatened. I've never felt endangered. I've never been talked to badly or yelled at. Well, maybe, no, not even, I was going to say maybe in the car while we're driving because there's a lot of road rage here. But other than that, everything's been smooth sailing. I've not experienced anything that has been said that politicians say. Not even once have I experienced these things. So in my opinion, Mexicans don't deserve this title that they've been given. This gap between the US media, what they're saying, and what's really going on in Mexico is way too big. And it needs to be stopped. This type of reporting that the US media does is a good example of textbook clickbaiting. And in reality, when most people come here and they're not trying to look for trouble, or they're not looking for anything illegal or trouble, you're pretty safe to be here. And Mexico is a very vibrant and special place that you'd be happy to be here, unless you're a troll. So if you come this far in this video, I'm sure you liked it. And I have more videos for you, like this one right here. This is 7 things that foreigners are doing in Mexico that locals hate. So click it, I'll see you there, and thanks for watching.